Coming up on the Just Fantasy Baseball podcast, my guy Vince and I break down what we're going to be talking about this season. We told you who we are, what our background is, and what you can expect from our podcast coming up this season. We also gave you some sleeper Super Bowl picks. Just kidding. Super Bowl already happened, but we still talked about the Super Bowl because we are recording this, I should say, before the Super Bowl. So all that and a whole lot more coming up on the Just Fantasy Baseball podcast. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Just Fantasy Baseball podcast. My name is Rami, Lavi, and across from me is my new host, Vince Damato. Vinny, what's up, buddy?
Not much, Rami. I'm very excited to get into this fantasy baseball stuff. I've been itching to do something like this for a while, so I'm grateful that I get to be with you. I've seen some of your work. Looks awesome, so I'm super hyped for this.
I'm super excited for this also, and it's a great opportunity by Just Baseball, and a big shout out to them, obviously, because this is going to be fun. We're going to talk fantasy baseball all year. If you're a fantasy baseball buff, if you love fantasy baseball, or maybe if you're just looking to try and win a league and you never won one, and you're playing fantasy for the first time, whatever it is, this is going to be the podcast for you. You're going to want to listen to us break it down. I'm told Vince is the fantasy expert. We're going to still get to know each other as time goes on. I'm just here to listen to you and to present you to the rest of the people. That's my role here. I have some fantasy baseball background, but I want to start here. So your fantasy baseball podcast, your background, I should say, your baseball background. How did it start? How'd you get into sports? How'd you get into this? How'd you end up here at Just Baseball doing a podcast with me?
Yeah, so I mean, my baseball roots go back to when I was a kid, right? T-ball. I did T-ball all the way through high school, and I played a little in college. I actually ended up playing mostly on a club team for UWSP, University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. And when I knew I wasn't going to go pro, I was kind of, trying to think of something else to do. And I've been playing in men's.
What age was that?
10, right? Yeah,
exactly.
10 years old. No, but I love the game. And when I was I graduated, I decided I still want to play men's leagues. So I played in men's leagues. And so I've still been around the game since I graduated. Feels like an eternity. And I kind of slowly got into fantasy baseball, and it's kind of turned into an addiction. So figured why not just keep rolling with the addiction, right? Just roll with it. So that's kind of how I got here.
You have to feed the addiction. I think it's important. That's the main thing, It's funny that you mentioned that. I didn't even know that. I played in a men's league in Maryland for a couple of years when I lived down there. It's so fun because it was guys 18 to 33. So it was all guys our age who are just out of it, still feel like they're so close, to the game and playing at a competitive level. And some guys were really, really good. Some were not as good, but it was a great experience. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, actually. So you mentioned it's 18 to 33. There was a few leagues that I played in that there were guys who were in their 40s and 50s who just phenomenal at bat to ball, just base hits all day. They were just so good at it, and they just continued to play. So it's amazing how baseball sometimes transcends that age factor of just like, you don't always need to hit home runs and throw 100 miles an hour to be good, right? You can just fill in the role. So yeah, I loved it. I'm sure you did too.
Yeah. So my background a little bit, because it kind of relates to that, is I work for WFAN, Sports Talk Radio. When I was a kid growing up, my father introduced me to baseball, and he introduced me to fantasy baseball very early on also, because if you are a longtime fantasy baseball consumer, player, listener, you may be aware of the Fantasy 411 show, which was MLB.com's and MLB Network's eventually. That was their prime fantasy baseball. That's where they talked about fantasy baseball. And my father was a regular guest. You would know him as Pete and Jordan. I don't know why he chose that, but he was a regular guest on the show that he would come on, and they had this segment that they did with him called Fantasy Baseball for Dummies. And he ended up winning their league a couple of times with a bunch of these guys who worked for Major League Baseball. So that's how I got into fantasy baseball originally. And then I went to the MLB offices as a kid and met them a few times. So that was cool. And then eventually I was like, hey, I want a career in media also. So long story short, I work for WFAN, which is Sports Talk Radio in New York City, number one sports talk radio in the country, in my opinion, and also ratings wise. But I say all that to say that we have this one guy who works there named Evan Roberts, who's a big baseball fan, probably in like also 7 fantasy baseball leagues. He probably does the dynasty leagues where it's like 7 years out. He's thinking about trading draft picks and stuff. So again, you can speak more to that. I probably can't, but he does a baseball league, also a men's baseball league now for WFAN listeners. And so I might join that this year. I'm trying to figure out, now that I moved from Maryland up to New York, I'm trying to figure out where I should go with my playing fantasies, or not playing baseball, actually, not fantasy. But as far as fantasy baseball, that's what we're here to talk about. Tell some of your background. You've had a bunch of leagues. You've won a bunch of leagues, I assume. I hope. Otherwise, I don't know why we're doing this together. Yeah, just tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm currently in 4 dynasty leagues, which, take up a lot of time. And then I think I'll do about 6 total redraft leagues, different structures. And then one of them will be one best ball league. So just draft and let your guys go. So I like to cover as many different ones as I can, different styles and structures. I know you're in an auction league. I've never actually done an auction league, so I'd
First
be really
time doing it. I've done it for football. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. I'm be excited to maybe try one of those too. Now that I'm thinking about it. So yeah, I like to cover as many bases as I can. No pun intended.
I mean, the pun was definitely intended, but yeah, sure. I'll let you get away with it for now. But yeah, that's the thing. So with this, we're trying to cover as many bases again there. I just used it, so it's fine. Now we're even. But we're trying to cover everything for all the listeners. We want everyone to be included here, and we will talk about everything. We'll have some specialty episodes that we'll throw in. So let's get into that a little bit, what we're going to be doing, what you can expect from this podcast. Let's start with the preseason. A lot of what we're going to talk about is positional rankings. That's going to be our basis for the preseason, I should say, because that's where everything starts, positional rankings. And then we'll do overall rankings, draft strategies, different things. What's been a draft strategy, if I can ask, that's worked for you in the past that maybe is your more, without giving too much away before your league start, that's been your consistent draft strategy that, like, you would say one hack or one just key thing?
Ooh, a hack. I think a hack, something that people maybe don't always take into account, is when you're drafting, and it's hard to do it in the moment, but to pay attention to tiers. And what I mean by that is, right, a lot of these players, like, we'll break down, positions. They sit in tiers, right? You might have a top tier of guys, and those are 4 or 5 guys, and their ADP lies within about 20 picks. And then there might be like a 30 pick drop off. And so paying attention, maybe not grabbing the first guy in that tier, maybe waiting until 1 or 2 or 3 of them go, and then picking up one of the last guys in that tier. That way you're getting just as much value as you would if you had taken the first guy, but maybe waiting a round or 2. So as far as, positions go, I think every year it's a little bit different as to find which positions you should attack. But the tier strategy, I think, is important to understand, because that's kind of across all leagues and even across different sports, right? That I'm sure occurs in football quite a bit too.
So I'm sure we'll do that also. We'll break down tiers. And I think that would be really important for auction leagues, because if you're drafting a guy who is a few dollars more expensive because he's at the top of the tier, but there's a guy in the same tier who's a little bit less, and then you could get higher end from the next tier, and you're spending less money total on 2 guys, like, that could be huge when you're talking about, there's no order in the draft necessarily. It's just everyone's bidding money on the guy. So that's important. If I can ask you, what's your most memorable season that you won in fantasy baseball? A season that you won, a league that you won that was most memorable, that stood out for whatever reason?
You mean fantasy baseball, or just?
I'm talking about fantasy baseball.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's what
we're here for,
about,
right? I think so. Yeah. There we go.
It was probably actually last year. So I'm in a dynasty league, and at the beginning of the year, I said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I got a good enough team. And so I ended up trading away a few pieces, including Jordan Lawler, right? A couple prospects, like higher end prospects. And I ended up getting back Pablo Lopez and George Springer, who Pablo Lopez really solidified himself as an ace last year. So that, I think, really carried me through. And I didn't have the best team, but I ended up winning the entire championship. I won quite a bit of money, and it was a blast, because, especially when you look across and you're like, wow, this guy's got a phenomenal team. This guy's got a phenomenal team. And then my team's competing with that. That's just so much fun. So.
And when one trade swings your league like that, I feel like it's such a good feeling, because I was reading an article a couple weeks ago about this guy who said he made this one trade and everyone ripped him in the group chat because he lost the trade. He gave up more value than he was getting. But for him, what he needed in order to win the league, he needed to make that trade. I don't remember what the example was. Maybe he needed more stolen bases and he was giving up a better player, but he had enough batting average or home runs or whatever it was and needed more stolen bases. And that was his key, was it's okay to get clowned in the group chat for a couple of days because he won the league in the end. So that's such an interesting thing, and something I'm sure we'll talk about when we talk strategy, is making that one big trade. Has there ever been a guy who's been just a league winner for you? Like, oh my God, I got this guy. I didn't expect to pick him up. Maybe it was a waiver wire pick that was a young guy. Maybe it was something under the radar, a draft pick that was a sleeper that just won the league. Or maybe it was, you know, one year you took Ronald Acuna last year and he won the league for you because he was that freaking good.
I have played for so long. I have never had a share of Ronald Acuna Jr. and it drives me nuts because he's such a fun player. But I think the one last year, the big one was Matt Olson. I had him on a few teams, and I mean, just bonkers what he did. And then I got Ellie De La Cruz quite a bit later than I was expecting, and Corbin Carroll is another one. So some of the young players there, but that's what I think I love. That's why I love playing Dynasty, is because I think I see these guys pop up a little bit sooner than others. And so I'm able to jump on their great ADP. And yeah, Corbin Carroll was a huge one for me last year. Ellie, I'd like to see a little bit more from him this year, but we'll see. And Matt Olson, though, was a huge one for me last year.
Yeah, with those young guys, that's key, because when you're doing these redraft leagues, if you have that background, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk prospects. We're going to talk about those guys, and maybe we'll do a separate ranking just for the young guys, because that's so important for us to talk about the young guys coming up, where you should draft them, what value you could get, because we're talking those back end of the draft. If you can hit on a couple of those, you're not going to hit on all of those at the back end of the draft. But if you can hit on a couple of those, that's where you'll win your leagues. Yeah,
and also, paying attention to that early in the draft and thinking, okay, I'm going to take a few shots later, so I need to build safer in the beginning, right? And so there's strategy there too, right? You can't just take shots on everybody because they're not all going to work out. So you have to be able to balance out your risk.
So that's all going to be, that's all going to be preseason. Once we get into the season, we'll be doing 2 episodes a week mostly. Unless there's breaking news, we'll do some walk and talks. Maybe we'll hop on an Instagram live, a YouTube live, stuff like that. Just different content constantly. We'll be writing some articles as well, or you will be. I won't be. They don't trust me with that. They're like, yeah, we'll let you talk, but we're going to let the experts write the articles. So that's good. But during the season, we're going to have a Sunday episode, which is going to be centered around waiver wire pickups. Now, a lot of people, everyone knows that that's when most leagues, Sunday night is the big waiver night. You're going into, if you're playing a head-to-head league, you're going into the following week of games, or a lot of times that's just when, the week is ending and you want to know, okay, who's hot, who's not, who am I dropping, who can I hold on to, who's hurt, injuries, all those things. So that's what we're going to do every Sunday, is going to be our waiver wires for that week. And then Wednesdays, or I guess Tuesday, Wednesday, it's just going to be a weekday episode. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, most likely. We'll do a bunch of things: mailbag questions from you, positional battles, buy low, sell high, just a bunch of different ideas that we could get into throughout the season. What are you looking forward to most talking about, I guess, on those Sunday episodes, and then maybe on a weekday episode?
I think I am most excited, especially on the Sunday ones, I love looking ahead to see the best pitchers to stream for the week. I love checking out the matchups, right? This guy's going to Oakland, he's been under the radar. He should be a great pickup. Things like that, I just love diving into. So I'm really looking forward to that on Sunday or Sundays. And then for the weekday ones, I really am a fan of buy low, sell highs, just because I think that's where you win a lot of leagues, right? Is this guy starts off cold, the owner may be thinking of dropping him or just doesn't think his value's there. That's when you pounce on him. And, baseball is a marathon, right? It's a long season. So a lot of these guys might stutter out of the gate. Or last year, like we get a guy like Matt Chapman who starts off scorching hot. We've seen that before, but it's going to be up and down. If you can sell a guy like that and say, hey, MVP candidate right here, and you sell him off high, those things like that are going to win you your league. So I'm very excited to break into those as well.
Mookie Betts terrified me last year. Like the whole beginning of the season, I was like, his just average wasn't there. And then when you look at his stats when the season ended, you're like, all right, he batted 250, but this guy was incredible. This guy's one of the best players in the league. And so it's stuff like that also where you have to have cooler heads. You have 2 people here who are going to watch it and kind of have different perspectives, which is also important, because I might be sitting here like, I can't deal with this guy anymore. Garrett Cole's had 3 bad starts in a row. I don't know what we're going to do. And you're like, well, look at his sample size. Look at his body of work. Here's what's going on. We'll look at some of the metrics. We'll get into all those things. And then that's the best way. Now, tell us about some of the work you're going to be doing, and really the Just Baseball team is going to be doing on the actual article side for Just Baseball.
Yeah, so we're still ironing out some of the details, but from what it sounds like, I'll be doing an article once a week, and we have a team of 3 to 5 writers. I don't know if we've solidified that number, but a team of writers that are going to be writing articles throughout the week. And one of the articles is going to focus on some of the stuff that you and I, Rami, discuss on the podcast. So if people want a little bit deeper dive into what we talk about, they can go there. But also there's going to be other content of things that we don't talk about. So tons of information is going to be available to anyone who wants it. And this isn't the only place to get it. There's going to be, pieces throughout the year, probably 4 or 5 every week. So I'd say keep an eye out for those, because I think, again, those are going to be huge if you're looking just for, and there'll be quick reads, right? It's not like you need to spend 30 minutes reading this article. No, here's what you need to know. Here are the guys that you should look out for, and here's why. That's it. Move on. So really excited to start with those guys.
That's going to be awesome. And one of the things with us is, as we're getting to know each other, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm joining a league of yours, and I'm going to figure it out. Hopefully I don't embarrass myself. I host a fantasy baseball podcast. I better freaking be good at fantasy baseball.
Yeah. So if you don't make the playoffs, we might have to talk about this.
It's like, I'm going to get fired if I don't make the playoffs. I'm going to have to do really well, but hopefully I'm going to be listening to you talk over the next month and a half or so before we draft. Or I guess now it's about a month. Yeah, about a month and a half. We're still a little further out. Today, when you're listening to this, it's Monday, February 12th. We're recording this Sunday, February 11th, Super Bowl Sunday. You might be familiar. Small game played. Some people don't watch football. Not me. I obviously do watch football. But I was saying, so as we get through the season, one of the things we're going to be talking about is our league, that we're going to be competing with each other. And we also are going to do a mock draft on the show together, where we'll talk about draft strategy with the two of us, because that's going to be fun. A lot of times people want to hear what's going through your head. What are you thinking about as you're drafting? Thinking out loud. That's really what it's going to be, is just the two of us kind of talking through our picks. When we see someone make a pick, I don't know about that pick. That didn't seem like a great pick. So things like that are going to be fun. What are you looking forward to most about being in a league together that we can compete? Maybe we could put a little extra on the line. What do you think that's going to be like throughout the season on this show?
Yeah, there'll be some spicy moments, maybe when we go head to head, maybe I don't talk to you as much, or maybe I throw in some digs. I don't know. We'll see what that looks like when we get there. But I'm psyched for that, because I'm super happy that you decided to join, because I think that's an awesome way for us to continue to just see guys that are out there and kind of plan our teams together. So I'm excited for that.
Same. As far as you personally, you grew up a baseball fan, like you said. Where'd you grow up? What was your baseball background? Not from a playing standpoint, but who'd you root for? Do you still root for a baseball team? Is that part of what you do, or are you just fantasy only?
No, I am a Chicago Cubs fan, diehard. I grew up around the city of Chicago, and I have transitioned over the last, especially since I've started playing fantasy baseball so heavily. I am the kind of person who I love watching a good game more than I love watching the Cubs sometimes, which is nuts, right? It's kind of weird for me to say and think about, but
did that change after 2016?
It definitely helped. If 2016 didn't happen, I think I'd be a little bit salty that they were that close. But anyways, it kind of has changed how I watch the game. And I think it's changed for a lot of people who play fantasy baseball, and same with fantasy football, right? You turn on the TV any given Sunday on football season, and you find yourself rooting for a team that you wouldn't really care about before. And so same idea with baseball. I love watching young guys. Royce Lewis is one of my favorite players. I'm super psyched for him. So all of a sudden I'm a Twins fan, right? And so I love watching from that type of lens or that angle. But at the end of the day, I am going to root for the Cubs, but I just love watching a good game.
Well, you had some fun guys last year, some fun young guys who came up, and it was kind of like, oh my God, like even Marcus Stroman, that first half of the season was like, wow, this guy's having, I had him on my team. I was like, this is way better than I expected to have. I also had Blake Snell. That was such a great draft pick by me, because I was like, Blake Snell didn't go early. Like, people weren't really high on Blake Snell going into last year. And he turns out to have this, Cy Young season. Now, fantasy wise, he wasn't as great as he was for regular baseball, just because of the walks per nine, and the walk to strikeout ratio was a little high for me. But he still, like, he could, like, when he would go 5 innings and then I knew he wasn't coming out for a 6, it was kind of frustrating every time. But I would watch those games anyway, because I love Don Orsillo and Mud, who do the games on the TV for the San Diego Padres. Their broadcasters are awesome. But that's another thing. We should talk about that. We're going to do that. Now, what football has, which is awesome, is they have Red Zone, and you could sit and watch Red Zone. You can follow all your players at once, right? Because if any of the big names that are on your team are going to score a touchdown or get a big play, you'll see it. Now, baseball, they've started to implement a little bit of big inning, which is that MLB TV kind of Red Zone version. Now, I think they could do better with it. I still think it could be better than it is. I've actually talked to Major League Baseball about making it better than it is, but they don't listen to me. It's fine. It's okay.
Not yet.
Anyway,
they will.
Yeah, one day they will. Once they realize what they're missing out on, all my great ideas, they're going to start listening to me. But yeah, we talked about like how we can make it better and stuff like that. But I think it's going to be really cool for us maybe to sit down on just a random afternoon or evening in the summer and just watch a game together or watch a few games together and interact. If we're going head to head, especially, and we'll do that on live, we'll do it on Instagram, we'll do it on wherever you consume this, Twitter, YouTube, and we'll go live and we'll talk about our guys that we have going up against each other, and we'll watch big inning together. So that's more content that's going to be coming your way throughout the season. And like I said, I'm excited to do this. As far as me personally, I'm a Yankee fan. I know people don't love to hear that, but if you really think about it, the Yankees aren't that good. Like, let's be honest. Come on. They got Juan Soto. They're not going to re-sign him. If you want to hear my opinion about the Yankees, you could listen to WFAN. I'm not like in love with what the Yankees. Yeah. You do want to hear it?
No. I'll listen. I'll go listen to WFAN.
I mean, it's just like, I'm curious. Like you gave up 480 innings pitched from last year, and you got back Juan Soto and Marcus Stroman. You really think you got better?
Yeah.
Like,
and a year of Juan Soto. Right.
Yeah. Like Juan Soto is going to be great. I know that, but I don't think the Yankees are going to all of a sudden win 100 games and win a World Series. They're still the fourth best team in the AL at best, right? Baltimore's better than them. Texas is better than them. Houston's better than them. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion on the Yankees. And I wouldn't even spoiler alert right now. We'll get into this, I'm sure, as the season goes on. I'm not even drafting a guy like Garrett Cole, a guy who's 34 years old, has put so many innings on that arm. And while he's been incredible, we know every year of the top 10 starting pitchers, 4 or 5 of them are going to bust or get hurt. Like, do you really trust a guy like Garrett Cole? He's been so consistent. He's been so good. It's almost a reason to not draft him, right?
Yeah, especially because he's going to go at crazy high price at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would wait for a guy like Pablo Lopez. I would much rather wait 2 rounds and get Pablo Lopez for the same type of. I mean, I think he's a stud, right? And so I agree with that. Yeah.
If it's a younger guy coming up, if it's a guy like Spencer Strider, someone else who hasn't put the same number of innings, are there any aces that you would go for in an early round, or are you totally, I'm not taking a pitcher till we get to that second tier?
If Shane McClanahan was still around, he would be one that I would go for. Unfortunately, he's not. I've mentioned Pablo Lopez. He's definitely a favorite of mine. That's a good question. I'd have to look at my rankings, but none that jump out because, and this is maybe a little bit of my strategy too, I don't attack pitching super early if I don't have to. Like maybe I'll grab an ace if I feel like there's a good value, but I'm going to wait and go for, 4 or 5 pitchers that give me a safe floor in a few later rounds, but I'm going to build a juggernaut offense if I can, first and foremost.
Is Adley Rutschman the most valuable catcher by far because he plays the most?
I don't know by far, but yeah, he's up there. I think you could make a case for a few different guys like JT Realmuto, right? He brings the speed that most other catchers just don't. And so I think that's important depending on how, if you get a guy like Yordan Alvarez or Corey Seager early and you need some speed, a guy like Realmuto is probably going to be more valuable than Adley. But you're absolutely right. Adley playing more than anyone else. I think I would have said Will Smith, but he's going to lose a lot of at-bats this year, I think, with Shohei.
Yeah, he's not covering that DH spot. As much. Yep.
Yeah. So that's another one that kind of stings, but I'm a huge fan of Will Smith. So it's hard to see.
How much stock? This happens a lot. People put in like a ton of stock the second half of the season, big playoff performances, and then they get bust. They get nailed on that because oh, well, down the stretch, this guy was awesome. But what about a guy like Sandy Alcantara, who had an awful season, but really came on the second half and was really good? Like his numbers the second half were almost comparable to his Cy Young Award numbers the prior season. So how do you look at someone like that as when you're looking at the season as a whole and you're coming into this season?
Well, I'm going to check on Sandy because correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's out for this.
Is he out?
Upcoming. Oh, maybe he's not. I thought he was out. But anyways, I'm sorry. So guys who, you said struggle in the first half and then kind of come back.
Yeah. And then come back in the second half.
Yeah. I think it depends.
Do you put in that? Yeah.
It depends on the track record of the player, right? How much have they shown in the past and which one do they tend to lean towards? Because it's a game of numbers, right? For anyone who's seen Moneyball, they know that, right? Like it's an average. And so they're probably not going to play the best baseball that they've ever played, but they're also probably not going to play the worst, right? And so the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, but something else you have to consider too. And when we look at, underlying data, this is why we do it. Some players are just prone to volatility. I think Matt Chapman's one. Another one that I've drafted quite a bit is Jack Sawinski. He's another one that's very volatile. So some players are just like that. Sandy is a little bit of a different case, right? Because it was like consistency, safe floor for such a long time. And then he kind of out of nowhere just blew up a little bit. So he's one.
Strikes.
Yeah. He's one I'd probably avoid unless I get a good price on him. I'd have to double check where his ADP is, but it's hard to measure, but I think it depends on, you look at a lot of different factors, such as the underlying data, such as track record. So just depends on the guy.
What's great about Moneyball and fantasy baseball is that it actually works, unlike for the Oakland Athletics and trying to win a World Series, where at the end of the day, Moneyball is a nice concept and it gets you a bunch of wins in the regular season. I don't think it translates as much in the postseason, where I do think you need those superstars and you just need those big game players. Mm-hmm. For fantasy baseball, you can win with a Moneyball strategy. And so if you look at the averages, it's all numbers. It's a game of numbers. And if you're good at the numbers, which you are, you'll win a bunch of leagues. I'm going to beat you in that league. And I already told everyone in the auction league, I'm like, guys, I don't know. I'm doing a baseball podcast. And I just got invited to another league, a league I was in last year. I'm undecided yet. So if they're listening to this now, they'll know that I'm undecided because he texted me and I never responded. So I feel a little bit bad. But I mentioned today is Super Bowl Sunday. So before we wrap up, what's interesting is when people listen to this, the Super Bowl is going to have already been played. Now, I'm never going to bet against Patrick Mahomes ever again. And I didn't bet against him. So when I had him as an underdog against Baltimore, I took him. When I had him as an underdog against Buffalo, I took him. I freaking love betting Patrick Mahomes as an underdog because I'd much rather lose money betting on Patrick Mahomes than lose money betting against Patrick Mahomes. That's how I feel about the Super Bowl. Do I think the 49ers can win? Do I think they're a more complete, better team? Sure. But I'm not going to bet on the 49ers. If you had to make a prediction beyond gambling, because I don't know, if you play fantasy baseball, you probably like gambling too. Like, do you gamble on baseball? I
did put a little bit of money on the Super Bowl today, and I'll put a little bit on baseball here and there.
I sprinkled a little on the Super Bowl. I could say maybe.
I saw your tweet that you found $50 and your old account.
Unbelievable! Like
that's awesome.
That's like better than finding money in your coat, like in the winter. Yes. You show up and put the coat on for the first time. $50 in freaking DraftKings. I hadn't touched it in months. I was like, oh my god! And the funniest part, it was a Travis Kelce Taylor Swift bet. It was the first game that Taylor Swift was at. Right, it was the first game she was at was the Jets game. I'm a big Jets fan. I host a Jets podcast with my buddy Bilal Powell, who played for the Jets for 10 years, and so it was the first time they did a specialty Taylor Swift Travis Kelce bet. It was for him to have over 19.89, so 1989 Taylor Swift yards in each half. So essentially over 20 yards in each half of the game, which he hit with ease. So I max bet it. I think the max bet was $25. I max bet it, got $50 back because they made it plus like 1-to-1 plus 100.
Sure.
I love betting on baseball. I love no runs first inning is really fun if you're into that type of thing. Hit parlays are really fun. Even like if you're just sitting there and you're like, next pitch, what's going to happen on the at-bat result? It's really fun bets. I wasn't allowed to bet on baseball last year because I worked for Major League Baseball. So this year I'm planning on, if I'm not working for baseball this year, I don't know. It's a seasonal job, so I might be working for baseball again. But if I'm not, I'm going to be cooking up some real big bets this baseball season.
Maybe you'll have some insider stuff you could share with me too,
Well,
make a little bit of money.
That's illegal also, but they can't catch me. So that's the thing. So if you start betting a ton of bets and hitting on all of them, maybe they'd be suspicious of me. But yeah, last year, so it's crazy because I was in a database, like just like, Travis Kelce, because we talked about him, was in a database of football players where an alert goes off in their database if he places a $5 bet. So I'm in the same database for Major League Baseball. I'm not anymore, I don't think, because like I said, seasonal job. So I'm assuming right now I'm not. So if I wanted to bet any futures on Major League Baseball, I could get them in real quick. And then if I end up working for them, I'm not sure yet. I'm definitely going to be working for the Yankees and their radio network this summer because I still work for the Fan. And that's part of WFAN is the Yankees radio network with John Sterling and Susan Wellman, which is really fun. But I don't know if I'll be doing actual work for Major League Baseball straight up. So tell me, we got off track. Tell me, which is important also because we got to get to know each other and got to make it fun for the listeners.
Yeah.
But tell me about your bets that you have going today. I have too many to count, but I'll give you a couple also.
Yeah, my big one. So it hurts me to say I'm going in with somebody and they really wanted the 49ers. So we are going with the 49ers to win. It does hurt me because I'm in the same boat as you. It hurts to bet against Patrick Mahomes, but I do have the 49ers. I have the over, and then I have Travis Kelce scoring a touchdown. Christian McCaffrey feels like another safe bet there too, but I didn't put any on there. So yeah, what do you got?
A couple of fun picks for you if you are picking the Niners, just because the Niners are not plus money right now. So, but Brock Purdy over 3.5 rushing attempts is plus money. It's about plus 118. And what's important is if they win and he has to kneel down a couple of times at the end of the game, those count as rushing attempts. And plus he's been running the ball. Remember last week he had to run a few times against the Lions when things were breaking down. He actually took off and scrambled a little bit. So he's been scrambling more in the playoffs than he had been in the past. So I like the 3.5. It's a good number.
Yeah.
I love the over there. I took that as a good hedge for the other side of the Chiefs. I also like as a long I should say MVP odds, a guy who a lot of people aren't giving the credit to Purdy. So if the Niners win and you're thinking, oh, wow, the 49ers won, then they're not going to give the Super Bowl MVP to Purdy. A good bet, I think personally, would be Deebo Samuel is plus 2,600 to win MVP. It's a long odds, but I think that's the type of guy who can combine for 150 yards rushing and receiving, have 2 long touchdowns, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, Deebo Samuel's the MVP. So I can see that happening.
Especially if it happens in a big moment, right? Like they're on the 20 and they need a touchdown in 5 minutes. But yeah, sorry, keep going. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, that's and another guy who's a really long, I think he was like 14,000, is Fred Warner, who's their linebacker. He has 10 plus tackles every game. And if he locks down Travis Kelce in this game, which is going to be key for them to win, he locks down Kelce and he makes like a bunch of tackles in the game. Yeah. I could see them giving an MVP to a Fred Warner. I just don't see Brock Purdy getting the MVP with everything. Because think about it. If Brock Purdy was a first overall pick in the draft, and in his second year, he's in a Super Bowl, and in his first year, he made it all the way to the AFC Championship, like we'd be talking about him like one of the greatest ever. We'd be talking about him the way we talk about Patrick Mahomes. But because he's smaller and it looks different, and he was the last pick in the draft, we don't talk about him the same way. And there's this narrative that's created around him. So I don't think Brock Purdy is going to win MVP, even if they win the game. So I do like some of those other picks at MVP. Now, me personally, I love Mahomes. I also love a under 1.5 or the shortest touchdown of the game to be less than 1.5 yards. Because if there's a pass interference in the end zone, or if they get down to the half-yard line, they need to pound it in. All those things happen, and then you get a 1-yard touchdown or a half-yard touchdown run. And so under 1.5 yards for the shortest touchdown, I love that bet. I love the Brock Purdy under 3.5 or over 3.5 rushing attempts. And I love the Chiefs. The Chiefs are still plus money. The line has shifted from minus 2.5 to, or plus 2.5 for the Chiefs to +1 or +1.5. It's gotten closer.
Sure.
Yeah, I saw that today. So I still love the Chiefs. I would hammer the Chiefs. I'd hammer Mahomes. I would hammer also Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce MVP almost feels like it's too easy. Like they might just give it to him. Because there is a case to be made that Patrick Mahomes just doesn't have this great game. Like if he throws like a touchdown interception and the touchdown is to Kelce and they also run in for a touchdown, like, and they win that way, I don't know. They only score 2 touchdowns. It's like the final score is 23-16. I could see them giving it to Kelce if he has 100 yards and a touchdown. Also, Travis Kelce to catch every target. I saw someone had that. That's like crazy plus odds, but he was 11 for 11 in the game against Baltimore. So for him to catch every ball thrown to him, and then the one time that like Fred Warner gets a hand in there and knocks it down, you're going to be killing yourself. You're like, God, like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. By the time you listen to this, you already know what happened in the game and all this stuff. You're either laughing hysterically at me because I'm a total idiot, or you're like, wow, that guy really knew what he was talking about. So here's what I'll tell you as a listener, do not base your fantasy baseball expertise or our fantasy baseball expertise on our football gambling, because nobody knows how to gamble on football. So just listen to this for entertainment and enjoyment, but come back next week. We'll have our first episode at some point throughout the week. We'll start with, do you know?
Second base, right?
Second base
position.
We'll
base.
Be previewing and predicting and ranking second base. So we'll do a top 10 ranking. We're going to give you the number 1 sleeper for second base, the number 1 stay away for second base, the best value draft pick for second base. You'll talk about the up and coming young guys for second base that maybe might get a call up in May or something, and we'll be coming up there. So we'll talk all about second base later this week as we continue, as we march towards the season. We get ready for fantasy baseball, because guess what? This is it. Super Bowl's over. Baseball's here. It's baseball time. Pitchers and catchers are going to report later this week. I can't wait. I'm excited for it. I hope you are, and I'm excited to be doing this with you.
Yeah, same. And I wanted to mention too, just because I couldn't go to sleep tonight if I don't bring it up, Sandy Alcantara is out for most of the year.
I
he
even
got
know
Tommy
that.
John
That's
surgery.
crazy.
Yeah.
You know what? That's on me. That's my bad.
No. It happens so quick and under the rug sometimes. Yeah.
I used him as an example more of a guy who, because I knew he was on my team. So I knew as a guy who like was awful in the first half and was great in the second half. So I was kind of using him more as an example, not saying you should draft him in particular. I was saying if there's other people like that who picked it up in the second half.
I just don't want someone to go I just don't want someone to go, oh, they said Santiago, I'm going to look for him in this draft and then draft him. And then,
or they turned it off already and they're like, these guys don't know what they're talking about. They don't realize. Exactly. You said it right away. You caught it right away. So you're good with that.
But then you maybe question. And so, I just had to bring that up.
That's my bad. That's
no.
That's fine.
It is what it is. But I'm psyched. Ready to go. Can't wait for second base. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait for that. And so far, thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate it. If you could subscribe, share it with a friend, tell people about the show. That's the best way we could grow the community, because we want to make this a community where by the end of the season, middle of the season, we're just talking fantasy. We're getting questions from everyone and everyone just sharing their experiences. And it could be a really fun time for everyone, because that's what it's about. That's what the fantasy baseball season is about. It's having fun, making this fun. And so that's what this should be. So I appreciate you, Vince. I appreciate, obviously, Just Baseball and everyone there for giving us this opportunity, and you guys for listening, because that's the most important. That's what's going to keep this podcast going. So until next time, until second base, I'll see you later, all right?
Yeah, sounds good, Rami. See you then.